So this was a real passion of yours, in other words.
Oh yeah.
And would you say, I mean, was the passion for information related to UFO and hidden technology? Was that kind of your passion, or would you say, what would you say is your passion in that regard?
I passionately believe that we should all have this technology, and not so much, obviously, you know, if you could confirm the existence of extraterrestrials and their contact with us, then that would be good. But to me, it was more important to have this free energy system.
Okay. So what did you find out?
About free energy and anti-gravity, unfortunately, not at all. But the UFO thing, as far as I'm concerned, it may sound circumstantial to some, but as far as I'm concerned, it's proven.
Thank you, Carl. Good morning, everyone. My name is Donna Hare, and I worked at Philco Ford Aerospace from 1967 to 1981. During that time, I was a design illustrator, draftsman. I did the launch slides and landing slides, and also projection plotting boards, lunar maps for NASA. We were a contractor, but most of the time I worked on site, in Building 8. I had the opportunity to do extra work during downtime, which was between missions, and I walked into a photo lab, which was the NASA lab across the hallway. I had a secret clearance, which is not that high, but I was able to go into restricted areas, which this was. At the time, I was talking to one of the techs in there, and he drew my attention to a photograph, a NASA photograph. It had a dot on it, and I said, "What is that?" Well, he drew my attention to it, and I said, "Is that a dot on the emulsion?" And he said, and he's smiling, and he has his hands crossed, and he said, "Round dots on the emulsion don't leave round shadows on the ground." And this was an aerial photograph of the Earth, I'm assuming the Earth because it had pine trees on it, and the shadows of the craft, or whatever it was, were in the same angle as the trees. And by its very nature, UFO, and I wanted to clarify that to a gentleman that was talking to me, means unidentified. So I did not know what this was. But I realized at this point that it's very secret, that it was kept secret, because I asked him, "What are you going to do with this piece of information?" And he said, "We always airbrush these out before we sell them to the public." So they're pesky little creatures appearing on this photograph they wanted to get rid of. After that, I decided I would ask questions to other people that work there. And I found that I had to ask them away from the site and not on site. A guard told me that he was asked to burn some photographs and not to look at them. And there was another guard guarding him, who was in green fatigues, watching him burn the photographs. And he said he was too tempted. He looked at one, and it was a picture of a UFO, and he was very descriptive. I can go into that later with anyone. He immediately was hit in the head, and he had a big gash in his forehead. He was knocked out, and he's terrified, so he would have to be protected. Another incident, I knew someone in quarantine with the Apollo astronauts. He told me that the Apollo astronauts saw craft on the moon when we landed, and that is what he told me. And he also was afraid. He said that the astronauts are told to keep this quiet. They're not allowed to talk about it. So I do want to let you know that I worked out there for a number of years, and I ran into this. So it's not something everyone knows that works out there for a long time. My boss didn't know about it. Some people that sat right next to me didn't know about it. It's very strange, because I don't know how they can do it, but they can let some people know about it and then others not. I'm willing to testify before Congress that what I'm saying is true, and thank you very much.
As part of the disclosure project, there was Donna Hare, a NASA photographic scientist who had up to secret clearance, was in Building 8 of Johnson Space Center, she says in her testimony. And that one of her colleagues was doing some photographic work, invited her over to look at it, and she saw high-res satellite imagery, maybe half a K above the treetops. I think it was like a white disc, and she at first thought, "Oh, it's a blob in the emulsion, some kind of fault with the photographic process." And he said, "Well, look, blobs in the emulsion don't have perfectly formed shadows going in the same direction as the trees, etc., etc. All the detail was there." And she basically was saying that they had this whole place in Building 8 for airbrushing out UFOs on a regular basis, because they then sell on their imagery to universities and the like. And having been all over other NASA installations already, I assumed the blank password scanning method would work the same in Johnson Space Center, and it did. Once I was in there, I used various network commands to strip out the machines that were in Building 8, and got onto those. And the very first one I was on literally had what she said. I can't remember if it was filtered and raw, processed and unprocessed, but there was definitely folders whereby there was a transformation in the data taking place between one and the other. These folders were full of images in a proprietary NASA format, or in a format I'd never seen before, no JPEGs or GIFs. They're also 200 to 300 megabytes in size, and being on a 56k dial-up modem, there was no way I was going to download it. It's like 5 minutes per megabyte. So what I did, the remote control program that gives you graphical control of the machine, turned the resolution right down, turned it down to I think 4-bit color. And then on the desktop of the NAS machine, navigated to the folder, double-clicked on the first image, the application launches, the image comes up on the screen, but it's still very, very slow. And what I saw, I was hoping to see exactly what she was describing, sources and very definite imagery. And what instead I saw was, I assume was the Earth. This was in sort of shades of grey, but you had the Earth's hemisphere, I think about 2/3 of the screen. And then halfway between the top of the hemisphere and the bottom of the picture, there was a classic sort of cigar-shaped object, but with sort of golf ball domes, geodetic domes, above, below, and this side, and I assume the other side as well, so to the left and right as well, and with very slightly flattened cigar ends. No seams, no rivets, no sort of telemetry. Antennae or anything like that, and it just had a feeling of not being man-made. There was none of the sort of signs of man-made.
So in essence it was a craft, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
And
when I first saw the top half of it, I thought, oh, well, it's a boring satellite picture or something. But as more of the thing was revealed, it was obvious it wasn't like any satellite I'd ever seen.
Wow.
And I've been space mad since I was about 14, so I've seen lots of pictures of satellites.
Okay, so you knew what you were looking at to some degree. So basically, did you feel, I guess during those 2 years that you were doing this investigation, threatened by what you were doing? Were you, in other words, I mean, technically you got caught out by one guy, right? Was that the only time?
No, I mean that guy, that network engineer sort of saw me but didn't realise that I shouldn't have been there. The chap that actually caught me was in NASA when this photograph was about 3/4 of the way down on the screen, and you see the mouse move, he right clicks the local area network connection icon, chooses disconnect, bash, that's me. And that's why it was such a strange moment. It was triumphant in a way. I thought I've completely corroborated what Donna Hare has said, on my own. But then got caught at the very same moment.
Well, when you say you got caught, I mean, how did he catch you? I understand he closed down the network so you couldn't continue to visit, but does that mean he actually knew who you were at that point, or did it take them a lot more investigation to find out actually where you came from?
It took them a while longer, I think a good while longer, although I'm not sure how much longer, because again I can't remember if that was fairly near the end of my investigations. I think that may have been late 2001, and I was arrested in March 2002. But what happened, I'm told, is that NASA and the various military establishments that I was in shared information, which I think these bodies should do more often, and don't do it enough, just like law enforcement, and realised that whoever had been in the systems was using the same tools, the same program, the same method of entry, and I think NASA knew it was from a United Kingdom IP address. And this is the thing, I wasn't a professional hacker, so I wasn't always covering my tracks and stuff or thinking properly. I was, being in time zones when people were still working in the offices and such. So yeah, that's... So
have you, okay, Donna Ware, I guess you heard her testimony or saw her testimony somewhere. Was it on the web, or how'd you come across